All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another live instant reaction to the Oregon Ducks' big win over the Northwestern Wildcats. My name is Zach, and welcome to the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. Ducks win big, 34-14. I predicted it would be a 35-10 win. The spread was a 27.5 points, so the Ducks did not cover. But like I said, I thought it would be a close game. Or I'm sorry, I thought it would not feel close, which I don't think it did. I think it feels way like more of a blowout win than a 20-point win. But still, very impressive performance by the Ducks. They looked good. I guess first things first is Dan Lanning's message for the team this week was strength in numbers. And again, I think that the Ducks really, I think they embodied that today. They had a great rotation at running back, great rotation at defensive back. Lots of kind of more of the same of what we've seen of spreading the ball around to a lot of different playmakers and getting them the ball however they need to. So I will go through my notes for the game. Um, let's see. So in the first quarter, I think the Northwestern Wildcats defense really stepped up big on that first defensive drive. That's kind of what I was expecting. And if they were gonna pull off the upset, I think they would have had to um, do that a lot more. Obviously, after getting pushed around for a couple of first downs, the Northwestern Wildcats they made a couple of big plays. They got some pressure on Dante. They made a couple of really good physical open field tackles, which they made throughout the game. Um, and they had great coverage here and there. They just ultimately didn't have the playmakers to keep up with guys like Dante Moore and Kenyon Sadiq. They started freshmen at corners and Iffy Obadego and Brandon Finney Jr., which I think is interesting and I think just really highlights just how deep and talented this team is. Um, And then I like the announcer saying that the Ducks are using Dylan Thieneman a lot like Ohio State uses Caleb Downs. I think he's very talented. Obviously, Caleb Downs has a much, we'll say, more impressive resume, but Dylan Thieneman is an incredible player in his own right. The thing I don't think they touched on is that like I said in my last stream, the Ducks are very deep in their secondary. And I think they have a lot of guys that not just this year can play that Caleb Downs role of playing him almost as a third or fourth linebacker. But, whenever Trey McNutt gets healthy, I think he can play that role. I think Aaron Flowers had an incredible game. He's amazing at playing downfield, playing downhill. He's amazing against the run. He's a very sure tackler. He's a hard hitter. Like, love Aaron Flowers. I think he looked really good. I think Jaden Kennedy is also kind of in that role. He's more of a star slash nickel, but I really like Jaden Kennedy in that role too. Kingston Lopa has shown the ability to do that this year as well. And where I'm going with this is that the Ducks are very talented this year, and I think the secondary is honestly maybe even the strength of the team right now. When ever since Dan Lanning's been in Eugene, I think it's very definitively probably been the weakness of the defense. Um, and then the first drive was honestly exactly what the Northwestern Wildcats needed to pull off an upset, and I mean the first offensive drive by the Northwestern Wildcats. They stayed on schedule and they kept getting to third and short, and then they got off the field and then they got a first down on third or fourth down, and that's exactly what the Ducks can't have when they're playing an opponent like Northwestern. Is I think Northwestern's first offensive drive took something like 10 minutes. That's the playbook to upsetting a team like Oregon. Is limit the explosive plays by the better team on offense and then have these long time consuming drives to keep that explosive offense off the field. And Northwestern was doing that to a T on the very first drive until they had those mistakes. I forget what the first one was. I think it was an interception, I believe, on the first drive. But I mean, they had the ingredients to go to pull off the upset, but ultimately they weren't able to put enough of those ingredients together in a large enough quantity to pull off the upset. Um, I loved so Northwestern had this kind of reverse trick play throw down the field, and I think the Ducks were very disciplined, and I really like that. I think it was if it, Obadego, I think it was in the coverage, or Brandon Finney Jr. And that's really impressive to see a true freshman, or I'm sorry, a freshman, stay that disciplined, um, not keeping his eyes in the backfield and getting baited by the eye candy. I think it was very impressive that the Ducks stayed so disciplined on the trick play, knowing that they have the talent. They don't have to bite down super hard on the trick play, that there's 10 other guys that can go defend that. They just need to cover their man. So love to see the discipline. A lot of times whenever there is a talent gap like there is between Oregon and Northwestern, you'll see the better team feel obligated to make these super hard bites down, to get a tackle for loss in the backfield. So very impressive by the Ducks to stay disciplined on that. Jaden Lamar, I think, impressed me a lot and has impressed me so far this year. He's incredibly agile and he's incredibly quick. If you used him in College Football 25, and I know this is a video game, but they treated him like he was like Bo Scarborough or Eddie Lacy, like this big power, super slow back, which, trust me, he is very physical, but I think he's more on the speedy, agile side, and can definitely power through a guy if needed. But I'm just so impressed with the backfield as a whole. Like the announcers were saying on the broadcast, the Ducks can honestly go 5, 6, 7 guys deep at running back, and then they get the ball to their playmakers however they have to. So, they had a handoff to Jamari Johnson. Last week we saw a handoff to Dante Moore. I think in the Montana State game, I think they had a handoff to Kenyon Sadiq. They had a wildcat or a formation that started with Dante Moore at quarterback, and then they motioned him out and brought in Luke Moga to quarterback, and that effectively acted like a wildcat formation. So I love that Will Stein is willing to do whatever it takes to get the ball into the explosive playmakers that the Ducks have. I think the Ducks have a relatively large number of playmakers that a lot of other teams in the country don't have. So it's really important to get the ball to those playmakers however they have to. And I think Will Stein is proving that, whether it's a swing screen to the outside, whether it's a wildcat formation, whether it's a handoff to a tight end. I just love the creativity that we're seeing out of Will Stein. And, the Ducks don't have to have one go-to guy because they have so many explosive weapons. Loved the play to score the first touchdown. It was basically a counter pitch, for lack of a better term. The entire movement of the offense and everything got the defense moving to the right, and then Dante Moore threw a pitch to Jaden Lamar going left, and he walked in for an easy touchdown. Loved the pitch by Dante Moore. That's really impressive to put it right on the face mask. Had a little bit of mustard on it, a little bit of extra power than it probably needed, but that's exactly what you want your quarterback to do. Put it on the face mask of the running back, let him go to work. And so very impressed by Dante Moore, and I think that's what makes him so good is he does a lot of the little things really well, but he also has elite arm talent. He's big, he has great anticipation, he has great ball placement. Northwestern in the first quarter did an incredible job of taking away those big explosive plays. In the first quarter, I believe Dante Moore only had something like 20 passing yards. And again, that's one of the ingredients of if you're going to upset a much more talented team like Oregon, is have a long time draining drive, which they did, a 10-minute drive in the first quarter, and then limit explosive plays. And I think Dante Moore was 4 of 6 or something in the first quarter, for 20 yards, something like that. So then in the second quarter, they missed on that double move play to Malik Benson. And I know this is nitpicky, but it's like those are the plays that you have to make to win a national championship. He had him, but he just missed them. And I think Malik Benson also slipped on the play. But that ball wasn't where it was supposed to be. In the first half, there were a couple of plays where Dante's accuracy was a little bit off. I don't know if it's a footwork thing. It may have been. His footwork's pretty consistent, but again, this is being so nitpicky because the minute details are what takes a team from making the playoff to winning a national championship. But immediately on the next play, it was followed up, I believe, by it was a great throw across the middle, I believe, to Decorian Moore. Dante Moore is just so good with his anticipation, and like they said on the broadcast, that's something that you can't teach. And I think that term gets thrown around a lot, anticipation, and I don't know if it's necessarily defined enough. So whenever someone is saying a quarterback throws with anticipation, what that means is they are throwing the ball to the wide receiver either right before he makes his break, or if it's an in route right before he cuts to the left, the quarterback has already launched the ball. And what that does is, because whenever the wide receiver is making that break, that's when there's going to be the most amount of separation. Even if a cornerback is playing the best coverage in the world, unless the cornerback knows the route, whether that's from film study or they just know, then that's the best opportunity to create an opening, even against the best cornerbacks in the world. So that's a skill you have to play in the NFL. And college, the coverage is a lot softer, so you don't necessarily have to do that, especially if you have any amount of arm strength, which Dante Moore definitely does. But that's why throwing with anticipation is so important, is because it can make any wide receiver open at any time. Let's see. In the second quarter, Northwestern was still playing very tough physical defense, and I think they played that throughout. I kept getting very Clark Lee Vanderbilt vibes from this Northwestern team. Clearly, they don't have the talent that Oregon does, but they fought. They believe in each other. They played physical defense. They were hard hitting throughout the entire game. So I think Northwestern does deserve a lot of kudos. A lot of people in my comments section thought, the Ducks would win by 40, 50, 60 points. But throughout the years, I've seen way too many Ohio State teams, Michigan teams play this noon kickoff against Northwestern, and struggle a little bit. And I don't think the Ducks struggle, but it's just a tough thing to go win by 40 or 50 points. Early kickoff across the country against a physical, well-coached team. So I think Northwestern deserves a lot of kudos for the way that they fought. I was also really impressed. The Ducks defense communicates really well. Granted, they haven't played the best teams, and two of the games have been at home, and then the third game was on the road, in a stadium that only holds 12,000 people. So I've been really impressed so far with the Ducks' communication. You don't see a ton of guys running all around, not knowing their assignments. They communicate really well, and the thing that I like is they do this on offense and defense, is that they, whenever the quarterback gives a signal, so let's just say he's touching the top of his helmet for a check, the entire team will repeat it back. And it's just, again, little things that add up to being such a dominant, elite, championship level team. And I think that's what is making this Ducks team different from the previous years, and notably last year when they went undefeated. And how do you get better from that? And I think it's a bunch of these little things like that, like the just making sure the communication is 100% understood and accurate. Again, and there was another impressive throw. Dante Moore threw it to Decorian Moore over the middle of the field, and it was into like quadruple coverage. But again, he threw it with anticipation on a dig route, and that's why you can get away with throwing into quadruple coverage like he did. Decorian Moore probably wasn't open on that play, but Dante Moore has a lot of confidence, and he has the arm talent to fit the ball into those tight windows. So, and later on, we see that got Dante in trouble on that. I believe it was just a go route. It may have been up the seam to Decorian Moore, where he threw his first interception in the season. But I'll touch more on that in a few minutes. And then so finally, in the end of the second quarter was where we see Dante Moore throw the touchdown pass to Kenyon Sadiq right before the half. And I remember last year, I believe it was the UCLA game, I remember watching Dylan Gabriel throw a similar ball. And because he didn't have the arm strength that Dante Moore has, it was a hospital ball, meaning the safety had time to come over to the receiver running on the seam and lay a really hard hit, and it broke up the pass. And Dante Moore has the strength, and this is really key in college. And the reason for that is, in college they run a lot of cover three. It's a great coverage. It helps against run. It helps in the run defense. But one of the weaknesses of cover three is that the seams are open. So having a guy that can rip the ball up the seam to guys like Kenyon Sadiq, or just great slot weapons like Dante Moore, is really pivotal in college, especially with the Ducks being such a balanced offense this year. A lot of teams are going to throw cover three at them, so then they try to take away the explosive play, but also can play the run. So that's just another key attribute of how this team can go further, is that teams that are trying to play cover three to cheat the run a little bit but also limit those explosive plays, they're going to leave the seams wide open, and now they have Dante Moore, a guy that can rip the ball. It's just it was a perfect play call where they were on the field. I think they were something on like the 25. That's a perfect location to rip a seam ball. Great ball placement, great arm strength. Love the play by Dante Moore. The start of the third quarter was the first offensive drive by Northwestern was really dominated by Aaron Flowers. He had one run play where he just crashed down hard, played really fast downhill. He's a really hard hitter, and I love the confidence that he plays with, and he's accurate. I feel like a lot of times, redshirt freshmen will play with a little bit of reckless abandon, and that's to some degree a good trait, but Aaron Flowers is accurate. Whenever he crashes down hard, he's usually right. I love Aaron Flowers as a player. I think he's going to be a great player for the Ducks. And I just think the secondary is in really good hands with Aaron Flowers, Brandon Tinney Jr., Ife Obadego, Trey McNutt. I know he hasn't played a snap for the Ducks yet, but I am so high on that kid once he gets back from the broken leg that he suffered a few weeks ago. I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I don't know how much he'll play this year just because the secondary is so deep, but I love Trey McNutt. He's so smart. He's so mature. Love him. Um, Oh, and then Tuioti, I feel like had a really good game. I feel like he is a little bit better against the run than Uiagalelei is. But he had a relentless pass rush where he went through, I believe, a tight end and a running back and still ended up getting the sack, which Bear Alexander also got a little bit of pressure on that play in the third quarter. But Tuioti has been very impressive so far to start the season. Um, and I think a lot of teams are just avoiding Uiagalelei, and I think they are maybe doubling him. And I think that's why Tuioti is having some of these more opportunities than Uiagalelei had. But Matayo also had a great pass rush on a third down, proving that he's still an elite pass rusher. And I really like the role that they're putting Matayo in this year. The announcers on the broadcast talked about it, but they were saying that last year they were playing him more as a 3-4 outside linebacker. And what that means is, just for the viewers that may not know, a 3-4 defense is 3 down defensive linemen and then 4 linebackers, and then 4 defensive backs behind them, versus a 4-3, which is 4 down linemen and 3 linebackers. And what that means in translation or in practice is that the defensive ends have a little bit of different responsibilities. And in a 3-4, the 2 outside linebackers kind of function as a hybrid defensive end pass rusher / they'll drop into pass coverage, and that's what Matayo did a lot last year. And he still ended up with 10.5 sacks. Granted, now he's the number 1 pass rusher, that Jordan Birch probably was last year. And I think Matayo's probably better than Jordan Birch. But I think it's much more of a natural fit for Matayo to be in this hand in the dirt, pass rusher, pin his ears back, go after the quarterback. Funny enough, I think Tuioti is a better 3-4 linebacker. I think he's phenomenal setting the edge on the run, on the edge. And I think he's a great pass rusher. I love how sure of a tackler he is. I don't think I've seen him miss a tackle yet this year. Really, if Tuioti can even get a hand on you, you're going to be tackled. So I'm very impressed by Tuioti. And I know I talk a lot about the secondary probably being the strength of the Oregon defense this year, but that has nothing against the front 7. I'm just probably very impressed with the development, the growth, and the improvement that we've finally seen from this Oregon secondary that's honestly probably been a little bit of a weakness, and honestly has held the Ducks back a little bit. I know the announcers were talking a lot about the Ducks struggling against the run last season, which they definitely did, but I think that was mostly due to their shortcomings in pass defense, and the things that they had to do to kind of compromise their run defense in order to support the pass defense. Now they have so many guys that are so versatile, and that's another thing I want to talk about is this Ducks team has so many guys that are good at everything. They don't have, okay, he's only a pass rush specialist. He's only a run stopper. He's only this. He's only that. Bryce Betcher is a perfect example of that. He is phenomenal against the run. We saw him several times today come downfield, have a tackle for loss or a run stuff. And then he also had one interception and almost had a second one, with his phenomenal ball skills. And this linebacker core, I think, also exemplifies that as a whole. We've seen Jerry Mixon have interceptions in back-to-back games, and not just like poor decisions by the quarterback. Like, these are great. Today he ran the route for the running back and really anticipated the throw extremely well, and also had a phenomenal interception return. In high school, he was a running back, and you definitely saw that, I feel like, on that interception return. And I feel like this team has just so much versatility, and that's probably my word for the day. Is Dan Lanning's was strength in numbers, but mine was versatility. Giving Jamar Johnson the ball on a handoff. Bryce Betcher playing the run and the pass extremely well. Jerry Mixon playing incredible pass defense, and then also later on in the fourth quarter, that phenomenal goal line tackle. That was textbook and just so amazing to watch. Love Jerry Mixon as a player. I hope he gets a lot more snaps moving forward. Love him. And more on the word versatility, we saw Dier Hill have a 66-yard touchdown, another true freshman running back that is just phenomenal and can obviously create explosive plays, and that was help generated by a great block by Jordan Davison, another true freshman running back. I think that's huge, not only for this year, in that it's a long season. If they go all the way to the championship, what is it, 15, 16 games? So you need to stay, you know, fresh and stay deep at as many positions as you can. But it also shows that first, if you come to Oregon, you have the opportunity to get playtime early. Doesn't matter if there's four running backs ahead of you, you still may get snaps. And also, if you do well, you're going to get snaps. And I think it also means that players from the transfer portal, they know that they can get touches and that they can have opportunities to be that explosive guy, even if they're not the starter. So I think it's just huge for advertising to the rest of the country, high school recruits and transfer portal recruits, that if you play well and if you block and if you do what you're supposed to, you will get touches at Oregon. And I think that's huge. And I just love that it kind of goes against the argument that the transfer portal is ruining college football, because these guys clearly all love playing as a team in a deep rotation, and whenever they get their touch, they take the biggest advantage of the opportunity that they can. As I take a little bit of a water break, what were you guys most impressed with today? Who was your offensive MVP? Who was your defensive MVP? What were some of your favorite plays? Any red flags that you guys saw? Yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear from you guys. I was also really impressed with Blake Purchase, and I think that kind of goes back to the conversation I was having a few minutes ago of Matai Uiagalelei is very much a hand-in-the-dirt pass rusher, pin his ears back. Very powerful guy. Tatum Tuioti is more of that 3-4 outside linebacker, great against the run. And Blake Purchase is, I would say, more of a Tuioti, in that there was one run play that was supposed to bounce outside of the offensive tackle, and he just did a phenomenal textbook job of setting the edge, holding his block, but also if the running back tried to run past him, he would have made the tackle. So where I'm going with that is that the Ducks have so many guys that they can rotate in, and there's no drop in quality. You know, Blake Purchase is just as good at stopping the run. So that's huge, obviously, um, in a long season, with the number of powerful teams and impressive teams that the Ducks are going to play. Having that depth is extremely key. And like I've already touched on, love that interception by Jerry Mixon. That was the prowess and the anticipation of a defensive back. Very impressive at the linebacker position. And then obviously an extremely impressive return, showing off those former running back abilities. Then the next note I have is that the Ducks have so many explosive playmakers. Jamari Johnson, is probably the second string tight end. Jeremiah McClellan, who I didn't know about coming into this year. I knew he was on the team, but thanks to a lot of you guys pointed out that he was going to get a lot of touches and that he really impressed the coaching staff in the offseason. And the play that he tried to dive for the pylon and score a touchdown that Dante Moore was able to do last week. I really like the parallelism of Jeremiah McClellan basically being able to do the same thing that Dante Moore did last week. That just shows that the Ducks have so many explosive weapons, and opposing defenses can't just key in on one guy, or they can't just key in on the run, or they can't just key in on the pass. Let's see how balanced I haven't actually looked at the team stats yet. The Ducks have been incredibly balanced so far this year, and again, incredibly balanced today as well. Today's been the biggest discrepancy, I believe, of their 3 games, but still, they had 197 passing yards and 176 rushing yards. That balance is key, and it's honestly very impressive that the Ducks have been able to have that level of balance through 3 games. In the first game, they were literally exactly balanced. I think it was 207 and 207, something like that. Last game, I think there was about a 3 or 4 yard discrepancy, and then today, a whole 21 yard discrepancy. And then where were the touchdowns? Let's see. Dante Moore had 1 passing touchdown and 3 rushing touchdowns. But I know Jordan Davison was a 2-yard touchdown run. Jaden Lamar was again a kind of a goal line run, and then Dier Hill obviously with a 66-yard touchdown run. And all of this was with arguably the Ducks' best running back, Noah Whittington, out with. They said he was a little banged up. In the comments or in the chat below, who do you guys think is the Ducks' best running back? Or who's your favorite running back? Because I think it may be a little bit difficult to say who's the best. I think they each have... I don't want to say they each have their own strengths, because I think all of the backs are incredibly versatile. But... I'm not sure. I think I'm very partial to Noah Whittington, especially just from the way that he picked up that blitz last week. Like that, how can you not love the guy that slams into a linebacker and puts his face into a linebacker's chest to stop the blitz? I think I also just love his run style. It's physical, it's fast. I love Noah Whittington, but also Jay Lamar is really impressing me this year. I love what we see out of the true freshmen and Dier Hill and Jordan Davison. It's really hard to pick a favorite, so I guess in the chat or in the comments leave who's your favorite and who's the best and why. Would love to hear from you guys. Let's see. I feel like the Ducks really embodied Dan Lanning's goal for the week, which is strength in numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different guys had a rushing touch for a total of 176 yards. Dier Hill had 94 yards, and that was the most, but he had 166-yard rush. But other than that, we're looking at 38, 25, 8, 5, 5, 2, 1. Strength in numbers at running back for sure. Receiving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different guys had a reception. There were 2 guys with 4 receptions. So again, doing an incredible job of spreading the ball around to these explosive playmakers. No guy had more than 62 yards receiving. So perfectly embodying that strength in numbers mentality that Dan Lanning would love to have. Aaron Flowers with 7 total tackles. I didn't realize that. That's incredibly impressive. I love him as a player. We've already talked about how much I love Tatum Tuioti, and he had 6 tackles, including half a sack and half a tackle for loss. Jerry Mixon with 5 tackles and a pick. Naeem Offord, didn't realize he had 5 total touchdowns. He got burned a little bit, but he's a true freshman, and he also slipped. But it's good that he got this experience. He's a former 5-star, depending on where you got him, and also I don't know if a lot of people know, but I believe he's also Mekhi Hughes' cousin, and that kind of helped when Mekhi Hughes transferred. I think that helped flip Naeem Offord from Ohio State to the Ducks. Bryce Betcher with 5 tackles, Dylan Thieneman with 5 tackles, Peyton Woodyard. All these guys are just the Ducks are so deep in the secondary. It's ridiculous. I think another really important piece to this puzzle is the Ducks. The Ducks, ever since Dan Lanning has gotten there, obviously coming over from Georgia, he has wanted to play a lot of man coverage. However, he hasn't had the talents to be able to do that, to be able to match up with receivers. And granted, they've only played Montana State, Oklahoma State, and Northwestern. Not the stiffest competition. But they are able to play more man coverage and do it well, and I think that really plays into Tosh Lupoy's and Dale Lanning's defense of wanting to play aggressive man coverage and just let your front seven go to work. And so I think that's another way that this Ducks team is improved from last year's team that went undefeated, is that they're able to play more man coverage, which is what the play callers want to do. So the play callers can be in their bag a little bit more. And that's just better all around. It's a little bit harder whenever you're having to run a little bit more zone, and that can also make you a little bit worse against the run. So, like I said, I don't think the Ducks were actually bad against the run last year, even though statistically they were. I think they just kind of had to compromise due to some shortcomings in the pass game. But because the secondary is much improved, they're able to play a little bit more man, play a little bit better run defense, better all around. All right, let's see. Loved the bit that Fox had about Dante Moore's children's book. I think it just really embodies Dante Moore's character as a leader. How much he's matured from his time at UCLA. I know a lot of people really hate on his time at UCLA. A lot of people thought he was washed. A lot of people thought he had no future. But I've been very impressed with Dante Moore as a leader. He clearly knows the offensive playbook in and out. And I think for a first-year starter, and today was only his 8th start at the college level, I think it's incredibly impressive the way that he's able to manage the offense. So love Dante Moore's children's book. I'll definitely be picking up a copy for my nieces and nephews. So absolutely love just him as a person. And then I thought it was funny, the announcers, they commented on Dante Moore's ball placement and anticipation, which I've already talked about a little bit in this live stream. And like the very next play, he threw an interception. That interception was really, really bad. I think it was just greedy. It really bugs me a little bit because that was really the only moment that I thought the Ducks were playing a little bit down to their competition, or maybe not taking them as seriously as they should have. It ended up working out because Northwestern ended up going for it on a 4th down deep in their own territory, and the Ducks got the ball and got a field goal. But that's a really bad interception if you're going to throw that ball, which you probably shouldn't. But if you do, that's got to be on the back line of the end zone, not on the 3-yard line. Like, that's got to be... If you would have thrown it at the back line of the end zone, I think DeCorian Moore would have had a chance. I can't still definitively say whether it would have been a touchdown. I don't think it would have. But it's like last week with that Malik Benson touchdown pass where Malik Benson caught it at his fingertips. That's the perfect ball placement, even though some people say it was almost an overthrow. But that's exactly where you have to throw that ball, so then it's only where your guy can get it. You know, whenever it's that far out, the DB can't reach around the wide receiver and break it up. and that's exactly where that ball should have been thrown and the way that that ball should have been thrown. It hung up in the air for way too long. It should have been on that back line where it's either an incompletion or it's a toe tapping touchdown by Dacorian Moore. Really bad interception by Dante Moore, the first one of the season. So through 3 games, been very impressive. Really only had one throw. That was a big no-no. And then once Luke Moga came in, I thought the out route to Kyle Casper, or no, yeah, it was Kyle Casper, was very impressive. It was, like I just mentioned, that throw was only where his guy could have gotten it, even though it ended up being a drop. But I think it just speaks to, like, one of my most successful videos on this channel is that the Ducks quarterback room is definitely the deepest in the country. I think that goes without saying. We haven't even seen their arguably their best quarterback. I mean, it was a quarterback battle down to the wire with Austin Novosad, who's been banged up to start the year. I mean, Luke Moga threw that ball exactly where it had to be, and Luke Moga's known more as a runner. So the fact that he can have ball placement that's that excellent really speaks volumes to the depth of this quarterback room. Again, this is when the goal line tackle by Jerry Mixon happened. Love the tackle. And then the Ducks end up giving up a long run late in the fourth for a touchdown. Whatever, it was mostly backups in at that point. I think it's a great learning opportunity for those guys, not only getting game reps, but making a mistake like that. I think it'll give them the opportunity to learn and improve it, and that's why game reps for depth pieces are so big and so important. Loved seeing the 0 penalties this game, especially after the number of procedural penalties from last week. I think it really speaks volumes that this team can have such a big improvement from week to week, especially playing on the road and an early kickoff, across 2 time zones. I think it's very impressive that the Ducks were able to limit those procedural penalties that kind of shot them in the foot last week, which granted they still ended up winning 69-3 or whatever, but still, those procedural penalties are what can prevent you from winning a national championship. So it's really important that they clean those up, and it proves that this team has the mental fortitude, the what's the term? You are resilient, the resiliency, the ability to improve from a week to week basis. That's huge for a team that wants to win a championship. So those were all my notes that I had on the game. Before I go into the stats again, I would love to hear from you guys. What were your thoughts on the game? What were you impressed with? What were you not impressed with? Who were your offensive MVP? Who were your offensive MVP and defensive MVPs of the game? Let me know in the comments or the chat. Would love to hear from you guys. And I'm just going to go into the stats now. Dante Moore, an impressive 16 of 20 with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Only 178 yards, but I think that speaks to more of the excellent job that Northwestern was doing in preventing those big plays. So they had to throw a lot more underneath routes to the talented playmakers that took kind of, short 1 or 2 yard passes to a 6 or 7 yard gain. Like we saw, Dacorian Moore did an excellent job near the goal line. I think it was in the first quarter. It was a poor throw by Dante, and he kind of had to pick it off the ground, and then he turned it into a 6 yard gain and almost scored. The other thing that I actually want to talk about is Dacorian Moore. For a guy that it doesn't look the biggest, I feel like he always falls forward. A guy with his stature, how big is he actually? Dacorian Moore. Yeah, he's 5'11", 194, so he's a decent weight. But I think it's really impressive the way that he just falls forward. A lot of guys his size, I feel like, typically get blown up, but he definitely has a college-ready body already as a true freshman, three games in. A lot of people compare him to Jeremiah Smith, and I think he can have the impact that Jeremiah Smith had, but he's not the same player. He can definitely go up and get a jump ball, but he's not. What's Jeremiah Smith? 6'3", 6'4"? Yeah, 6'3". DeCorian Moore is not that guy. Um, I like the comparisons more to Garrett Wilson. I think that's kind of more his bag. Maybe a little Chris Olave, maybe a mix between Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Would love to hear your comments in the chatter in the comments, what you think. But DeCorian Moore, I love that he always falls forward. I think that's just another little thing that makes him so elite is finishing plays with a 1 to 2 yard gain by just falling forward. Let's see what others stats do I want to look at. Brock Thomas looked good too. I think he showed some impressive throws. Dr. Hill, obviously, with a big long touchdown, we've already touched on. As a team, the Ducks averaged almost 6 yards a carry. That's definitely elite with 3 touchdowns. I'm really impressed with Malik Benson. I think Malik Benson looks really good. I think Gary Bryant Jr. did play today, but he did not have a catch. But I like just the sure-handedness of Malik Benson. He definitely has some explosiveness, but just as a go-to wide receiver with a lot of experience, I think he plays that role really well. I love how they use him. I think he's more used in that kind of X role, and I think he does that really well. No fumbles, love that. I would love to see the Ducks start to force some fumbles. I know obviously they try, and I know I'm getting nitpicky here, but again, if we're talking about a team that's trying to win a championship, they've been doing a good job of forcing interceptions. So it's not like they don't create turnovers, and they still have a positive turnover margin on the season. But again, that's just another opportunity where they can improve to have a deeper playoff run than they had last year. Let's see. I've been really impressed with Ife Obadego so far to start the season. I think he's probably one of my favorite defensive players on the Ducks so far this season. He plays great coverage. He plays great run defense. He's a hard hitter. He's so long. He's really that prototypical cornerback of what the NFL wants right now. I mean, this is going to give me some hate, but I definitely get some Sauce Gardner vibes from him of just the length and the discipline and the anticipation and he's just so smart, high football IQ. So love Ife Obadego. Let's see. Any other stats I want to touch on? The Ducks only gave up 135 yards passing. I do think one area for improvement was I feel like the Ducks defense got pushed around a little bit more than they should have today. I think, especially in the first half, I didn't like how the Ducks were getting pushed off the ball. But a lot of credit needs to go to Northwestern. They were really switching up their snap counts. So the Ducks defenders weren't able to fire off the ball like they like to, and that helps prevent some of the penetration that the Ducks get, which can help with run stuffing and whatnot. So really impressed with Northwestern and what they were able to do and switching up the snap count. So a lot of kudos to them. And while I'm here, I'll take a little bit of time to explain what I mean by that. So a snap count is whenever you see in movies, you say, on 3 or whatever, or on 2. And what that means is the quarterback's going to say hike. And until it's the second or third time that he says hike, the ball's not actually going to get snapped. And so what that does is, like the announcers on the broadcast say, it makes the defenders kind of go to their final location faster because they think that the ball is actually coming. And then it can also get them to jump off sides, which is then a penalty, which also helps you out. But the more that you switch up that snap count, the defenders aren't able to predict when the ball is going to be snapped as easily. And that means that you can't just fire off the ball. You actually have to wait until the opposing player moves. And that really makes it a lot harder as a defender to stuff the run, even in pass rushing situations. So big kudos to Northwestern. They knew that the Ducks defensive front was going to be aggressive. So love that they were switching up the snap counts to kind of counteract that. But the run defense is something that can be improved. I think so far throughout the year, I think it has been better, but I think the switching up of the snap count is what kind of did the Ducks in, and they can clean that up. Let's see. I'm also very impressed by Northwestern's defense. I think a lot of kudos needs to go to them. They're tough, they're physical, they tackle well, they play decent coverage for most of the game. So a lot of kudos really needs to go to Northwestern. All right. Then looking forward to Oregon State next week. That one is that one at home or on the road? Oregon State football. That is at home next week. So obviously Oregon State is a little bit down this year. They've been struggling a little bit so far. So let me know in the comments what are y'all's early predictions for that game. I'll definitely be making a preview video for that. Yeah, and so should be an interesting game next week. Looks like it's a noon kickoff Pacific time. All right, and with that, I want to thank you all for watching so much. My name is Zach with the Sports Corner at Choose Adventure Media. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you